Would you like to see an X-ray of your soul, an X-ray of your emotional infrastructure? Well, just like the body, today with scans, with X-rays, with different types of technologies, we can see the inner workings of what makes us tick. We have a blueprint that will give you a picture of the spectrum of your emotions, an understanding how they work and what you can do to improve them. Check out the description below, the special Omer book, 49 steps, personal refinement, character development, understanding and cultivating the very nature of your emotional being. The story is the story of the twin brothers, Jacob and Esau. We spoke about it in previous weeks. It's a central component in the biblical story. We all know the story of wrestling with the angel. One of the classics, Jacob wrestling with the angel of Esau, his brother. When you read the story, not even in depth, just on an ostensible level, twins, two brothers, twins, and yet at odds at each other's throats. From the moment that they were being conceived in pregnancy, they were already battling with each other. And the Bible tells us, two nations within you, God says to Rebekah. You carry two archetypes, two personalities. And what are the two personalities? One is the warrior, the hunter, the survival expert. And the other is the wholesome scholar, the reflective one. And they're brothers. They both need each other. They both complement each other, but yet they're at war. And it's not just a war between good and evil here. We're talking about two drives. One is me, taking care of my needs. The other is looking for how I serve those around me. Now, we all know we need both. A person who completely ignores their own needs will end up becoming a doormat and will end up losing their dignity. At the same time, a person who's only driven by themselves and by their own needs will never be happy, will never be complete. So there's a taker within us and a giver within us. But can they really be compatible? And that's the dilemma, and that's the story of Jacob and Esau within each one of us. And that's why it's so important to know the story. Now, what's the end of the story? That's what we read, the final showdown. So you would think one will go to war with the other, and they indeed are ready to go to war. But that's not what happens at the end. And they end up embracing. Because initially, materialism, the search for materialism and the search for the spiritual clash with each other. They clash for resources, they clash for time, they clash for energy. Look at your own life. You can't be doing both at the same, seemingly. And that's why there's a battle. So Jacob, after 20 years escaping from Esau's wrath, finally is about to meet him. He sends messengers to check out, where's my brother at? Is he still angry? Is he still my enemy? And he discovers that Esau is marching with 400 men to war to go to battle with him. So though he felt maybe his brother was ready, he realized that's not the case. So he prepares, he prays to God, faith. He prepares for war in case, and he prepares a bribe to appease him. The prayer and the appeasement end up working. And they finally meet and they embrace. Whether it was a complete embrace or not a complete embrace, that's discussed by the different commentaries. But then Joseph says key words to his brother. He says, we're brothers. Why don't we come live side by side? Let's live in peace. And Jacob, realizing the time has not yet come for that, wisely says, you go ahead, my brother, and I will follow. I'll come slowly. You see, the children are young. The sheep are tender. They need more time. And immediately the classic commentator, Rashi, Shlomo Yitzchaki, asked the question, is he deceiving Esau yet again? He knew he was not following him. And Rashi says, no, he was. He was talking about the future, when the world will come to peace between matter and spirit. We will live side by side. But right now, the children are young. The sheep are tender. We're too vulnerable. We're too fragile. If we enter into the world of the material world too much, immerse ourselves, it will overwhelm us. It's like taking a child and throwing them into the workplace when they're 3 years old. Taking a child and putting them into a mature, hostile, dark world. You need resources for that. You need strengths. And Jacob realized it's going to take time. But the key thing is not that they can't join. We need time. The bird first needs to be protected in its nest before it spreads its wings to fly. So let's understand the deeper concept behind this. How indeed can matter and energy, can matter and spirit really join each other? Today, nobody asks that question anymore. After Einstein's E equals mc squared, that energy and matter are essentially two states of the same reality, and they're interchangeable. We came to realize that energy and matter may look different. Just like a gas looks different than a liquid water, and liquid looks different than the ice. They're all the same water. When you freeze it, it's ice. When you heat it, it turns into gas, and you can reverse the process many times back and forth. You put a piece of wood in a fireplace, and it turns into warmth and heat and light. So the wood is no longer there, but it's produced fuel. Just look at your smartphone. Look at any piece of technology. Matter has become a conductor, a generator of communications, of electricity, of atomic and nuclear energy. That myth of two worlds, of a duality, is exactly that. To the eye, it looks different. And when you go deeper into physics, you realize there's an integral unity that connects everything. So there is diversity. Of course there are differences, but fundamentally there's a singularity that connects it all. Now, if you look into the teachings of the mystics, they've said this long ago. So there are schools of thought that distinguish between matter and spirit and basically say, you want to have a spiritual and a higher end life, a more transcendent life, you have to move away from the marketplace, from the pressures of the daily routines and quotidian of survival. Move to the mountain, move into nature, go to the east. Asceticism. You need to have more of a monastic lifestyle. Because when you indulge in the material world, it begins to become a force. In the words later in the Bible, a land that consumes its inhabitants. Better stay in a spiritual oasis, insulated, protected. There's other school of thought. Primarily, you'll find it today in the Calvinistic Protestant work ethic. No, engage with the world. And be ethical, be virtuous, be charitable. This became the standard a lot in the Western world. Not everybody lives up to it. Capitalism has its inherent challenges, its inherent greed, inherent exploitation. Karl Marx exposed a lot of it, not that he had a better alternative. His alternative was one that theoretically may be very appealing, but not practical. So which one is it? Do we have to separate ourselves from the material world? Or do we have to become part of it and be the warrior? Or can we be the scholar? Or do we need to leave that world to be the scholar? Say the mystics, the Kabbalistic mystics, and they say that is based on a premise that there are only two realities. But there's another reality that transcends transcendence. That is neither closer to spirit than it is to matter, nor closer to matter than it is to spirit. And it's not defined by either of them. And when you come to that point, you can spiritualize the matter itself. In other words, the tension that exists between matter and energy, between matter and spirit, is resolved, is relieved through spiritualizing the material, because within the material lie the divine sparks, the energy, the fire the electricity that we've been talking about. So when you take your work, and you take your food, and you take your exercise, and you take everything that you call survival, existence, and you align it with higher purpose, not as two separate entities. Not here I'm indulging like an animal, and here I'm like sublime like an angel. No, you bring the sublime into matter, and you bring matter into the sublime, you actually confuse the two. No different that we understand matter and energy as being reversible. And matter turns into energy, and energy is expressed through matter. And that's the final showdown. So the embrace of Jacob and Esau gave us a taste of it, but Jacob realized that we're not ready yet for the full fusion, for complete fusion between the two. That will take time. That's why we need to have boundaries and distinctions. We can't just say everything is unified, that's that. And we have boundaries. You go to work, you do your work faithfully, you come home, your home is different than your workplace. But as you mature, you don't compartmentalize, you realize you can really integrate the two. So in our lives, we begin our childhood, first a far more spiritual childhood. What does that mean? A child should be protected and nurtured and insulated and immunized from the hostile corruption that lies potentially in the material existence of competition and greed and self-interest. A child in a healthy home, should be protected from all of that. That's the stage where you develop the soul's values, aspirations, love, care. Once you have that built, a fortress, once you've built those reservoirs, those resources, then you could enter a world where there is a battle between people's interests, and that battle takes on sometimes ugly form. I remember hearing from someone, it's right after 9/11, very sad, said, I always envied my friend. We were both in college together. He ended up landing a job in, what was that firm called, Fitzgerald? Well, basically he was completely devastated in the 9/11 attack. And he had this bay windows, one of the upper floors in the World Trade Center. And I used to look at it at times from a small office not far away, and I envied him. And then that fateful morning came. Cantor Fitzgerald, that's what it was, Cantor Fitzgerald. And I envied him. I used to be jealous of him. And then I discovered something in the world of finance. As much money you're making, you're being constantly pitted against one another to compete. And your friends become conditional friends based on interest, self-interest. And some of that idealism that we had when we were younger, we lost it. In his words, I lost my soul. And then that fateful morning came. And my friend, my good old school chum from high school and from college, was killed. And I realized, what is life about? But money has that power. Money is not a bad thing. But it can bring out the worst in us. It can bring out the best in us. When Karl Marx writes how money alienates the person from other people, the employer from the employee, the person from the product that you make, there's a lot of truth in it. As I said, his solution was not viable. The only solution is when you spiritualize the material and you realize as much as success as you have, that should not define you. You work, that's not who you are, that's what you do. And when you realize that, you can reconcile, more than reconcile, you can fuse the two. Because one is the fuel for the other. Matter, the money we make, the successes we have, is the fuel for our spiritual growth. And that's where the dichotomy disappears. And that will be the end of the story. We still have some work to do. But the world has become a far more humanitarian, a far more refined place. I mean, what else do you have? It's unimaginable. Remember a few years ago in Haiti, there was an earthquake. What happened in the past when there were earthquakes? A natural disaster. All the neighbors would rape and pillage and completely exploit the country, the helpless country. Today, Countries were competing to send airlifts of food, medicine, support. Why would a country like the United States spend billions of dollars of foreign aid, of hard-earned tax money of the citizens of the United States? There is a spirit of generosity, of charity. Yes, there are tax write-offs, but that itself, that was established, is something unprecedented in the last few hundred years, especially in the last years. So with all our challenges, the world is a gentler place in general. Specifically, we still have to deal with plenty of problems. There's crime, there's murder, there's selfishness, there's war, greed. But there are signs of the Jacob Esau reunion, of the matter-spirit convergence. Our job, our mission, the final frontier, is to make that the full reality, the highest standard. That's what we're really looking for. And it's not a contradiction. You have all your needs met, but your life is not driven by needs. That's because part of life is getting your needs met. But not define yourself by me, me, me. It's about what we are as a whole, a synergy, a harmony within our diversity. So the Jacob Esau story that goes back thousands of years couldn't be more relevant today. Look at the polarization. Look at disagreements. We can't even disagree properly. But we have full potential to do so. And as I said, there are many good signs of a new dawn, of a new era. That, my friends, is what the 21st century should turn into. Where matter and spirit meet. Where heaven and earth kiss and marry. Where it's material life and our physical and spiritual lives converge into one harmonious dance, one cosmic symphony, where each feeds the other. And it begins with you and I. Where does heaven meet earth? At your doorstep, in your home, in your personal life. Before we change the whole world, change yourself. You, your home, your community. And then there's the ripple effect. If we can transcend our differences and recognize how we complement each other, and that the purpose of life is not my own survival, what I need, but together with you create the greater music. That's Jacob and Esau, the twins, the way they were always meant to be. And it's our choice. It's your choice. It's my choice. I am confident that we will choose well. Thank you. Simon Jacobson, meaningfullife.com. You can find this and many other programs. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, your suggestions. And of course, please share this. It's a message I believe worth sharing. Thank you again. Look forward to see you soon.